Great. I think we have critical mass, I would say. So we can start. Again, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're based. And thank you so much for joining our first session of the Advanced Therapy series, Decoding CAR-T Access, Patents, and Lessons from Global Health. I'm very happy to be joined today by José Rengifo, a researcher from the think tank Medicines, Information and Power, from Universidad Nacional de Colombia, and Giulia Segafredo, Senior Non-Communicable Disease Access Manager at the Medicines Patent Pool. My name is Adrián Alonso Ruiz. I'm a researcher and advocacy manager at Salud por Derecho. We are a very small civil society group based in Madrid, Spain, that works in a very large number of issues, but in this case, we'll be focusing on access to medicines and more specifically on access to advanced therapies. I wanted to give a short introduction about this series, since this is the first time or the first session of the series of webinars. The idea when we thought about this series of webinars is to share or discuss barriers and solutions to expand equitable access, global access to advanced therapeutic medicinal products, ATMPs, being able to share it with experts and hear from experts, academics, global health practitioners, developers, academics, and other civil society groups about how they face different barriers and how they try to overcome in the field of ATMPs, but also in other areas of global health that might be of interest for people working in ATMP development and access. Finally, we wanted to create a space for people like you to join, to share your experiences, to feel free to share your comments, your questions, and your ideas, and discuss freely how to expand access to these breakthrough therapies. Very briefly, as a short introduction to what we will be dealing in this series of webinars, we use ATMPs, Advanced Therapy Medicinal Products, similarly to how the European Medicines Agency uses it. So it divides into three different groups of therapies: gene therapy, somatic cell therapy products, and tissue engineered products. So we are talking for a very broad range of products. Today, we'll be focusing on CAR-T therapies, for instance, that are considered a gene therapy medicinal product. I won't go into the details because that's not the purpose of the presentation of today, but just to say that we are dealing with a very broad set of products and technologies that are changing the landscape of medicinal and healthcare globally. The way I wanted to start the presentation was asking a couple of questions. What are ATMPs that I already described, and whether access to ATMPs is a global health issue? And I think it's a timely question to be asked, and perhaps not very often asked in the global health sphere. I would try to answer using three perspectives. The first one is the type of technologies that we are dealing with. It's a very versatile set of technology platforms that can be used for a very wide number of health priorities, including global health priorities. In a few weeks, we will have a webinar that will deal with ATMPs being developed for HIV care. And NCDs are increasingly a concern for global health advocates and organizations. You can see here on the right-hand side of my screen a breakdown of all the clinical trials that have been done between 2001 and last year, showing the large number of indications that ATMPs are being tested against. Obviously, when we talk about ATMPs, and gene therapies is the best example, it's one of the best examples. We're talking about affordability issues. And as you can see in the figure on the right, prices for ATMPs and for gene therapies, more in particular, such in the case of this figure, are unaffordable for even the highest income economies in the world. So Livmeldy, that was recently approved, it's almost priced at £3 million per patient, and making prices of CAR-T therapies, feeling a bit even low compared to this one. The third one is the global inequity. And when I talk about global inequity, I mean inequitable access to the knowledge, to the materials and the technology and medicines that encompass this field of advanced therapeutic medicinal products. You can see on the screen how clinical trials for ATMP are geographically distributed. And we're talking about almost 20 years of clinical trials with a very few number of trials being carried out in low and middle income countries, and with most of the powerhouses of clinical trials for these treatments being high income countries, and very specifically the US and China. This is not very different from one of the topics that we will be discussing today, patent landscapes and the issue of intellectual property in this field. When we look at the country of residence of all CAR T-cell patent applicants, we see that more than, or almost over 2/3 of all applicants come from the US and China. We also see that most patent families that are granted are from innovators based in these two regions, mostly the US, China, and the European Union, with a bit of presence from Australia, India, and Canada. And that the top 10 jurisdictions where CAR T-cell patent protection has been sought are basically the same countries and regions, leading with the US, China, and the European Patent Office. We don't have a lot of data on where ATMPs are approved and where there have been regulatory approval has been sought and granted, but patent protection being sought in these countries can serve as a proxy of where access is most likely granted. So these are the three issues that I wanted to present you before starting with our panelists. We hope that by increasing awareness about these issues, we can also raise awareness about the need of greater global governance, institutions, and actions that expand access to these therapies worldwide. And without further ado, I would like to give the floor to José Daniel, who is a researcher, as I mentioned, in the think tank Medicines, Information and Power of Universidad Nacional de Colombia. José Daniel, the floor is yours, and I'll share your screen in a minute.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Adrian, for your kind invitation. Thank you, Giulia, and thank you everyone that has joined the webinar so far. So what I'm going to share with you today is the result of our research that was already published, and it was pretty much like the study of a patent landscape in Colombia, and how these patent filings were actually analyzed by our patent office in Colombia, in order to identify some key issues that may allow Colombia and other countries in the Andean community to build more strict patentability guidelines in order to expand access to CAR T and other gene therapies in our country and in our region in the north of South America. Next, please. So the research question of this research project was, what patent mechanisms can Colombia use with the international, regional, in the Andean community alongside Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia, and national IP laws to promote local research and development and innovation for pharmaceutical inventions, specifically CAR T gene therapy in the medium and long term? And the reason why we wanted to research on this was because in Colombia and also in some other countries in the world, there's a big interest in producing CAR T because the lack of access, because the barriers, as Adrian also already mentioned, is expensive to access to CAR T and other gene therapies. So that was the main factor of this research question. How can we expand access to CAR T from intellectual property, and especially from intellectual property guidelines in terms of patents? So this was our research question in this research project. The hypothesis was the TRIPS agreement, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but the TRIPS agreement allows every member state of the World Trade Organization to exclude specific inventions related to CAR T gene therapy from patentability through flexibilities and interpretations aligned with its goals. This may allow these member states to promote local research and development, ensure freedom to operate, and increase access to gene therapies. Next, please. So the general objective and what we wanted to do here was evaluate whether the flexibilities in the TRIPS agreement related to patentability and public health can be used to exclude inventions linked to CAR T gene therapy from being patentable. We have like specific obligations in almost every country in the world right now related to the protection of pharmaceutical inventions, but there are like small windows, policy windows that can be used in order to exclude the protection of some pharmaceutical inventions related to CAR T from patentability. Next, please. And for this, the three specific objectives was first, analyze the protection of pharmaceutical inventions via patent rights within the context of international, regional, and national legal frameworks. Then characterize the patentability exception for specific inventions related to CAR T gene therapy from a public health perspective in light of the patentability and public health flexibilities contained in the TRIPS agreement, specifically one patentability exclusion system that's called methods for therapeutic treatment, and I'm going to talk about this later. And finally, analyze patent applications for inventions associated with CAR T gene therapy filed within our patent office in Colombia, which is the Superintendence of Industry and Commerce, in light of the patentability and public health flexibilities contained in the TRIPS agreement. Next, please. I'm not going to speak too much about the arguments in favor and the arguments against patents. I'm going to build a general argument that's usually defended from those who defend patents on pharmaceutical inventions, and they usually say that patents are there are a necessity for this kind of inventions because they are an investment incentive. In order to promote investment in technologies related to the pharmaceutical sector, there's a need of exclusive rights that can grant the patent holder the possibility to exclude third parties from a specific time for a specific period to use and import and export and make research with commercial purposes on the technology that was patented. So this is usually said from those who defend patents in pharmaceutical inventions, and they also promote the idea of the social contract of a patent, because patents are supposed to be public. So if I have if I give the invention to the public, if I publish what I'm going to be using for the next 20 years, it's like I give this and the state gives me in exchange an exclusive monopoly for the invention I already patent. So these are like the general arguments in favor of patents, and there are also arguments against patents. The most important one in this webinar, of course, is the lack of access to medicines that can come from evergreen practices, which is pretty much like extending from an artificial perspective these monopolies once and again with small modifications or specific modifications of already patented technologies, which in the end limits the freedom to operate for example, local initiatives that aim to produce and to make research and development in order to produce a specific invention in the national area. So these are like small resumes of small summaries of arguments in favor and against pharmaceutical inventions, patents on pharmaceutical inventions. Next, please. Now, for those who are connected to this webinar that don't know what the TRIPS agreement are, these are like two parallel timelines. The first one is related to how patent protection has worked on pharmaceutical inventions in the international perspective, and then you can see the timeline in the Andean community, which I already said confirms Colombia, Ecuador, Bolivia, and Peru. What I want to say this because I'm not going to speak about each one of these agreements and measures and other specific laws in terms of patents, is that we come from in just like 100 years, we come from a perspective of not granting patents on pharmaceutical inventions, and also promoting the building of local capacities in order to have some sort of health sovereignty in terms of who produces and who is allowed to import or export medicines and other pharmaceutical inventions. To like 30 years ago and from now, a perspective of protecting pharmaceutical inventions as strict as possible in order to, as I already said, this is the argument of those who promote patents on pharmaceutical inventions, in order to promote investment in these types of inventions. And there has been like this landscape has been evolving. So we see how from the approval of the TRIPS agreement in 1994, the Andean community changed the idea of not patenting pharmaceutical inventions to not only patenting pharmaceutical inventions, but also patenting pharmaceutical regulatory test data. So in the Andean community, in those 4 countries, we have a pretty much strict regime of pharmaceutical invention protections through patents and other intellectual property mechanisms. Next, please. So this was like a small introduction on patents in order to try to apply this to the results of our research. This is like a really basic form of explaining what CAR-T is for those of you who may not know what CAR-T is. Actually, there are like new technologies related to CAR-T that may exclude one of these 4 steps, but it's really important to divide this in these 4 steps in order to understand the perspective I want to show. That was like the result of our research in terms of how to assess a patent application related to CAR-T gene therapy. So the first step is the extraction of T cells from the patient undergoing immunotherapy at a healthcare facility. This is done at a healthcare facility. Then there's a process of modification of the T cells by introducing a chimeric antigen receptor. This can be done by different mechanisms. For example, CRISPR-Cas9 is one of them. Then there's a process of expansion in a laboratory of those modified T cells that are now stronger to combat cancer. And finally, there's a process of infusion of the modified and expanded T cells to the patient at a healthcare facility. Next, please. So this is how CAR-T works, and there are some academics and also some public policymakers that have argued that there is a possibility, a small policy window, to exclude some inventions related to CAR-T through an exception to patentability that almost a big number of countries in the world have under TRIPS agreement, because this is a TRIPS agreement flexibility. This allows people to, member countries to exclude certain technologies from patentability. And this exception of patentability is called therapeutic methods for the treatment of the human body. This has 2 justifications. The first one is moral, and is pretty much the related to the availability of treatments in the healthcare facility context. And also there's a technical ground, which is related to the lack of industrial applicability. And this is one of the 3 classic requirements in order to get a patent. There's non-obviousness, there's novelty, and there's industrial applicability. So some used to argue that because of the lack of industrial applicability, we should not grant patents to therapeutic methods for the treatment of the human body. This has been implemented in different ways in different countries. For example, in Argentina, these are not patentable, but also there's a specific disposition related to the dosage regimes of pharmaceutical formulations and second medical uses, which are also considered as therapeutic treatment methods. Another interesting case is the one of the United States of America, because they don't have this exclusion, but they have some sort of immunity in the physician's immunity statute, which pretty much brings physicians an immunity for using methods of treatment, which is aligned with the logic of the moral justification of this exclusion to patentability. Next, please. Another interesting case is the one of Ecuador. Ecuador not only excludes therapeutic methods for humans as not patentable, but also disposes that ancestral therapeutic methods for treating and curing diseases are considered the collective heritage of peoples. Because of this, they are not protected by patents. And in the European Union, there has been some interesting changes in the guidelines for examination of the European Patent Office, but 2022, the therapeutic methods for the treatment of the human body are not patentable. And I'm going to speak a lot about the European Union in the 3rd and final chapter of this presentation. Next, please. How does this work in Colombia? In Colombia, the therapeutic methods for the treatment of the human body are not patentable. And in our patentability guidelines that are issued by our patent office, uh, both therapeutic methods aim to cure diseases or bodily dysfunctions are considered as this type of methods, and because of this, they are excluded of patentability. And also, these guidelines say that in vivo diagnostic methods are not patentable, whereas ex vivo diagnostic methods may be patentable, which means that if the process is done inside the body, it's not patentable, but if it's done outside the body, it's patentable. And this is really important, but because of what I'm going to show you in a moment. Next, please. So this is the most important part of our research, because what we did was pretty much studying how CAR-T works, and different case laws and case studies from the European Union, from the European Patent Office. Why did we choose the European Patent Office? Because the Andean community is inspired in the European patent regime in order to build its patent legislation. So if you go and read our Andean patentability guidelines or our national patentability guidelines, you will see that we are based in case law from Europe. So we wanted to study this case law in order to understand how can be applied. It can be applied to how CAR-T works. So there are five main things or main provisions that we found that are applicable to CAR-T in this case law in Europe, in the European Union. The first one is that the method does not necessarily have to be carried out by a physician. It can be other type of personnel inside a healthcare facility. The second one is that if at least one step of a method has a therapeutic character, the method claim will not be patentable. So these first two, I want to compare them with CAR-T because I already explained in these four basic steps how CAR-T works. The first one, CAR-T gene therapy is carried out by personnel with diverse technical capacities across its different stages because of how complex CAR-T is from a technical perspective. And in the second hand, at least one stage, which is the infusion of T cells, has a therapeutic character as it seeks to cure cancer. The third provision, and you can see the names of the cases, or the when I say common is because we found numerous cases related to this issue. The third one is that the method must be performed for therapeutic purposes. For example, for curing diseases. Once again, the method is therapeutic insofar as it aims to cure cancer within the patient's body. Fourth, a method will not be patentable if, although it is performed on tissues or fluids removed from the body, those tissues or fluids are returned to the body. This is really important when we talk about CAR-T, because when we talk about CAR-T, we are extracting cell bloods, we are modifying the cell bloods, but we are infusing these cell bloods again in the patient's body. And I'm talking about classic CAR-T because now we have in vivo CAR-T as well. And finally, the patentability exception does not apply to products to be used in such methods, nor to methods consisting of the use of substances or compositions. This means that not every technology related to CAR-T can be excluded from patentability, but there are some specific technologies related to CAR-T, specifically those related to the method, the therapeutic method, can be excluded from patentability. Next, please.
I don't want to be that person, Jose Daniel, but you need to start wrapping up.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'm just going to show like the cases, so I can like do that really quick. So this is like the whole justification of our research, and then we did this search of patent applications in Colombia. We found 38 patent applications. 13 were granted, 19 were in a substantive examination, 5 were rejected, and 1 was abandoned. Next, please. So this is like basic data related to the top applicants. The first one is the University of Pennsylvania of the United States. You can also see when we talk about patents, we talk about different chapters of a patent, and the last one and the most important one is the claims. The claim chapter. There are different types of claims, and the language used was pretty much related to cells, methods, and vectors. Look how common is to use to see the language of methods in those patent applications. 29 of 38 use the language methods, which once again are excluded from patentability. Next, please. So what you can see now in the screen are examples. So I'm not going to go to each of one's examples because of time. I just want to say that when we were reviewing these case files in Colombia, the Patent Office of Colombia actually had objections related to methods of therapeutic use. So what our office said was in 19 of these files was there are significantly grounds to object this patent application and deny this patent application because it's claiming something that cannot be patentable because it's a method of therapeutic use. Next, please. This also happened with another claim that is commonly seen in CAR-T terms, which is the use. In Colombia, we don't protect use. That's common in other countries in the world. So there are 12 files or case files where we saw these objections from our patent office. Next, please. And this is like, sorry, the last one. The one about the titles. I just wanted to say this is like a small annotation. Even the titles made reference to the treatment, to a method of therapeutic use. For example, treatment of cancer, or for the use in treatment of cancer, or for uses in immune oncology. So you can see this even in the titles of the patent applications. Next, please. And just and this is like the final point of this presentation before the conclusions. But what our patent office did, which was worrying us as researchers, was that the patent office made these objections, but made also some recommendations to the patent applicant in order to change the language of the claims so the patent could be granted. This is common and has been normalized in the patent practice. But the thing about this was that we were talking about administrating or infusing these modified cells into the body. So what our patent office said was pretty much like, you should not name that part of the patent in the patent applications or the patent claims. What you should be making is excluding that part of the patent application claims and just talk about an in vivo manufacturing method. Because if you talk about an in vivo manufacturing method, you can grant that patent, because in vivo manufacturing methods, as I said before, are not are patentable. So this was like the something that worries us in these case files. Next, please. So I already like made some discussions about this, but what we tried to make in this research was pretty much like not only discussing why this is wrong, but also give some recommendations. And we have like two main recommendations before we finish, which is the first one is a regulatory provision, which is modifying the guidelines of the patentability in Colombia in order to comprehensively exclude from patentability therapeutic methods which, seeking to cure a disease, include at least one step carried out in the human body, even where certain steps or stages of such methods are performed ex vivo or in vitro. This is aligned with the European case files that are actually used in order to build the guidelines in the Andean community. And also, and this is really important, and with this I'm going to finish because I believe the conclusions were already made in the presentation, there should be a guideline related to interpretation of the claims chapter in light of the description chapter in order to determine whether, according to the description, the material extract and modified ex vivo or in vitro will be re-administrated to the human body. Why are we saying this? Because in our legislation, in our patent legislation, the claim chapter must be interpreted in the light of the description chapter. And when we see the description chapters in all these patent files, we are talking about CAR-T as a process where you, in the end, have to apply those cells or infuse those cells into the human body again. So if you're saying this in the description chapter, you can't interpret the claim chapter without acknowledging that in the description chapter. So this is our final recommendation in this case. I think I already made the conclusions of this research through the presentation. Sorry about the time. I will now give the floor to our next panelist. Thank you, Adrian, for the invitation.
Thank you, José Daniel. Now, without further ado, Giulia Segafredo from the Medicines Patent Pool will give a presentation about the work of MPP in global health. Thank you, Giulia, and the floor is yours.
Great, thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for José Daniel. That was impressive, super interesting. So, and thanks Adrian for the invite. I'll try to be brief, but in the next 10 minutes, I'll really try to give you an overview of what is the Medicines Patent Pool, why it was created, and how voluntary licensing, which is our main mechanism of action, is really trying to tackle and accelerate access to medical innovation, all type of medical innovation, and how we're trying to adapt our model to be suitable and flexible to be potentially used on different type of medical innovation. So briefly, I'll tell you more about how we work and what is voluntary licensing. And then I'll try to give you a bit of description how we've been evolving in terms of disease areas and type of technologies we work on. I'll give you a couple of examples, both in terms of voluntary licensing for medicines, but also on an example of how we tackle technology transfer. To finish with some very high level consideration on how we try to keep our model alive and to make sure that we are finding the right way to tackle all the new medical innovation. So starting from what is the Medicines Patent Pool, it's a public health organization. It's a foundation, and it was created by UNITAID back in 2010. And when it was created in a moment very similar to the situation described by José Daniel right now. So back in 2010, we were at the peak of the HIV pandemic in terms of number of patients living with number of people living with HIV. Progressively, all people living with HIV were having access to HIV treatment, but there was a number of innovative treatment that was becoming available in high-income countries, but for some reason they were way less available in lower middle-income countries, and even if they were available, they were hardly affordable. So the question was, how can we develop a new type of partnership with the originator, with the patent holder, to make sure that patients can have access to newer treatment earlier and in a more affordable way. And that's how the concept of voluntary licensing was created. A voluntary license is an authorization that the patent holder, which in this case is more often a pharmaceutical company, grants to a generic manufacturers through the Medicines Patent Pool, in case we are the negotiator partner. And through this authorization, the patent holder allows the generic manufacturer to develop, produce, and sell the patented medicines as if they were generic in the geography that is agreed. So their licensing terms and condition can vary from one license to the other, and that's the role of the Medicines Patent Pool, to make sure that these terms and conditions really can reach the maximum impact in terms of public health. But the two main aspects of the license that can vary are the geographical scope, so the number of countries where these medicines can be sold as generic, even if they're patented in high-income countries, and the type and the quantity of information that the patent holder provides to the generic, which can go from a dossier, a regulatory dossier, to a broader package of technology transfer. Overall, ultimately, what is the impact? What is the role of a voluntary license? The results that we aim is really to make sure that patients in lower middle income countries do not need to wait until a patent expires. And Jose gave you an amazing overview of the patent, the duration of patents. So patients in lower middle income countries do not need to wait until the patent expires to have access to a generic, a quality assured generic and more affordable version of the newer type of medicines which they might need. How do we work at the Medicines Patent Pool? The first step, our first step, is really to try to identify what are the public health priorities. We don't have the bandwidth nor the intention to work on all the medical innovation. So for us, the first key step is really to try to make sure that we identify what are the key and transformative health innovation we need to work on. Once we identify this, then we start building a strategy of engagement with the originator and the patent holder to potentially negotiate a license. When we succeed in negotiating a license, then we need to select a number of qualified manufacturers, which are mainly in lower middle income countries, that can have this authorization of manufacturing and selling the generic version of the product. And in parallel, what we try to do also, especially for the in the NCD space, is to work with governments and organizations that can prepare and accelerate the uptake of the medicines once they are available as quality assured generic. Why do we think that this model is and how do we try to negotiate license? So a voluntary license is successful if it's benefiting all the type of stakeholders. Clearly, the first stakeholder that we try to benefit is people living in lower middle income countries that can have access to the medicines that they need, the newer medicines that they need, in a more affordable and a quality assured manner. Where public procurement exists, a voluntary license can really succeed in maximizing the efficiency of public procurement and the budget allocated for public procurement. Voluntary licensing in general represents an opportunity for generic manufacturers, clearly. It gives them the opportunity to work on innovative medicines way earlier compared to what is the normal course of action. But it can also be an opportunity for innovators that have a new way to bring innovation in countries in low resource setting where otherwise they would most probably not have an easy access. Oops, it seems that my... so far, starting, as I was mentioning, we started in 2010, and we've been signing licenses with 22 innovators. But what is also increasingly becoming interesting and important for us is to make sure that the geography of the generic companies we work with is as broad as possible. So far, since 2010, we've been working with 93 generic manufacturers in 24 countries. And one of the key aspects of our future strategy is really to make sure that we support local manufacturing of medicines. The impact that we've been measuring so far is that between 2012 and 2024, we've been facilitating the delivery of 51 billion of doses of treatment supplied in 148 countries, creating a saving of 2.3 billion. But more importantly, what we aim at by 2030 is to reach 170,000 deaths, the aversion of 170,000 deaths. Going briefly, as I was mentioning, we started working in 2010 with a focus on HIV, but throughout the years, as the model proved to be effective, we've been expanding our mandate to additional infectious diseases first, and then starting in 2018-19, we also started working on non-communicable diseases. In 2021, after a thorough assessment, we managed to expand our mandates also to biotherapeutics, including monoclonal antibodies. And in the same year, we also launched the WHO mRNA technology, which I'll tell you more about in a few slides. As I was mentioning at the beginning, I wanted to give you just a bit of example to translate into a practical action this concept of voluntary licensing, and I'll start clearly with our best license, I would say, which is the license for dolutegravir, which is part of the first-line antiretroviral treatment for HIV. The license was signed in 2013, and the first generic became available in 2017 in in a number of countries. Now it's available and it has been supplied in 129 countries. But what is more important is that DTG, the generic version of dolutegravir, reached 24 million patients, and the overall, thanks also to the partnership with other partners such as Universidad and the Global Fund, the yearly cost of the full HIV, the first line HIV treatment per patient has reached the price of $40, which is an incredible success story in the global health space. I also wanted to share the experience of the first cancer license that we signed with Novartis in 2022. The medicine is nilotinib, which is a second-line medicine for the treatment of chronic myeloid leukemia. I'm pretty sure that you're all familiar with imatinib and the Gleevec case. So nilotinib is a second line to Gleevec, with the same originator, which is Novartis. We are working with 4 generic manufacturers. 3 of them, 2 of them already received FDA approval. The third one is about to receive it next month. And 20 countries, the product has been filed in 20 countries, and it has already been supplied in 3 countries, which are Salvador, Indonesia, and the Philippines. What is interesting is that even if the supply only started 6 months ago, the price reduction that we've been observing is by 81%, which is already an incredible result for us. I want to move to the WHO mRNA Technology Transfer Hub, which is also connected to my last slides on how we are trying to adapt our model to more complex medical innovations. And the rationale of the mRNA Technology Transfer Hub was really to make sure that what happened during COVID and in terms of imbalance of availability of COVID-19 vaccines in between lower middle income countries and high income countries would not happen again in the case of the next pandemic. A next pandemic could come. So with the WHO, we decided to build a program which aims at creating mRNA capacity in a number of countries. So far, there are 15 countries. So to make sure that they can easily and rapidly produce any type of vaccine they might need in a case of an epidemic. Briefly, as I was mentioning at the beginning, we are trying to keep our model up to date with the medical innovation. I must admit that medical innovation evolves at a speed that is way faster than us. However, the way we try to do it is, before an expansion of mandate to other technology, we really try to engage on a strong and thorough feasibility study. And this allows us to understand not only whether we can be beneficial in a new setting, but also how we can be beneficial in a new setting. And when we perform our feasibility assessment to decide on whether to expand to biotherapeutics, one of the key learnings of the exercise was really that technology transfer would have been an extremely important activity to tackle if we wanted to improve affordability of biotherapeutics and also the time of development. And that's the reason for which we built a full team. It took us 2 years, but we built a full team that is now dedicated to technology transfer. And this is happily an additional activity, an additional intervention that we can provide to both the originators, but also to the receiving units, so to the local manufacturers. And that has been proved to, in time, has proved to be an effective strategy to accelerate the time of development. So I finished my presentation, but I just wanted to highlight 3 key takeaways: that voluntary licensing has proved to be an effective model to accelerate access and improve affordability to medical innovation in lower middle income countries. However, as the technical complexity of the medical innovation increases, the role of the support in terms of transferring the technology is becoming increasingly important. So the 2 things need to be considered together. And I think it's very important to for every organization which has a similar mode of operation as they want in MPP, is that before engaging in any new technology, it's extremely important to understand how and they keep from a technical perspective in order to be successful. And with this, I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Giulia and Jose Daniel, for very super interesting presentations. I wanted to see if there was any question from the audience in the chat, or you can also raise your hands and ask directly, I believe. I see a question from Manuel Juan. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much for both presentations. I have a specific question in relation to vaccination of mRNAs in cancer, where you decide to define the mRNA for each patient based in the sequence of these patients, of the tumor cells, and define which is the purpose. I perfectly understand that when you are producing mRNA for a virus or whatever what you want to vaccine, this is a specific product that it's finally a product. But when you are defining a specific mutation, how is this regulated? It's sure it's a gene therapy and NTMP, but it's different for each one. And finally, as was commented by the other speech, is an in vivo production, because you are vaccination with a new things, and in vivo you produce the immune response. What is your opinion about this situation that will arrive, as has been demonstrated by BioNTech and others that are there? This can be really protected. It's possible to develop without any protection, or what is the situation? Sorry.
No, it's super. Adrian, can I try?
Please go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is super interesting. And to be totally honest, when the WHO mRNA Technology Transfer Hub was built, it was built to fill the gap in terms of COVID-19 vaccination. So it was on the vaccination side. Now, what we've been performing is mapping of the application to the NCD in the NCD space, exactly as you were mentioning. And I'm an extremely big fan of leverage the technology as much as we can now that the investment in building it was made. So what we are trying to do in this case is mapping what are the application that we think are relevant. And once we have identified them, we will engage with the originators to understand whether there's the willingness to engage on a voluntary license. However, what is important to underline is that all the 15 technology recipients that are part of this WHO mRNA Technology Transfer Hub are collaborating with their government. And now that their capability of mRNA has been established or is under establishment, they are also enabled to do their own research and respond to potential national priorities. So there are some centers that are moving and toward, clearly into the next application compared to COVID-19. To be totally honest, all the applications that I've seen so far has started at country level, therefore viruses and vaccines. So I think we're still far from the cancer application, especially for the reason that you mentioned, that is like personalized medicines, and it's not necessarily super feasible in some of the countries. But we are trying to understand and study if there's one or two potential application that could be feasible, more feasible than other.
Great. Thanks, Giulia. Thanks, Manuel. I see a question in the chat from Decoding regarding the point about Colombia's IP office offering advice on redrafting patent applications. The question is quite simple: is it legal? You're
Oh yeah,
muted.
I think I see. Yeah. I think what I see. I just wanted to like give a small answer to the other question, and then I will address that point because I think it's like a really good question because of what I said. But yeah, regarding the in vivo technologies, I do believe that the in vivo technologies are supposedly a hotspot to biotechnology patent law right now. Because as you said, when we talk about in vivo technologies, it's pretty easy to apply the exclusion of patentability of methods of therapeutic treatment. However, what I think is going to happen is that we're never going to get to that point where there are no patents on a technology that uses an in vivo approach. Because in the case of CAR T, for example, we have patents on cells, we have patents on vectors, we have patents on products in general, and multiple patents. I'm talking about like dozens of patents, if not hundreds of patents related to products. And even if you exclude from patentability the claims and the language of methods, you're still going to have the products patents. What we try to do with this type of research proposals is pretty much promote the building of local capacities, and those local capacities are going to find a more easy to navigate patent landscape if our patent offices are not granting patents to these broad number of different technologies. So this allows local capacities to build a better strategy without the fear of being sued or being sued because of a specific patent related to a method of treatment. But I do not believe that we are going to get to that point of not getting patents on, for example, RNA vaccines, because we still have the product patents, and I think that's pretty much like the approach of this exclusion in terms of gene therapies. Regarding the other question, sorry, the question related to the Colombian office, patent office. What I do believe is that, of course, when we talk about a patent process of a patent application, the patent office is usually trying to object the patent application in order to the patent applicant to improve its patent application, which is absolutely legal. And when I talk about the specific issue of CAR T patents related to methods, that was legal as well. The thing about this discussion is that if you find, I mean, because of the power patent offices have in order to apply these kind of TRIPS flexibilities, which are like really small policy windows related to this topic, the patent offices can actually try to apply this more restrict approach to the evaluation of these technologies in order to promote local capacities. Because, for example, in the case of Colombia, our patent office is in a public entity which also promotes national industry. So it's more about which approach do you take as a patent office in order to assess a patent application. And if you have the legal window that allows you to reject a patent application because of that interpretation, or in the scope of that interpretation, that will be recommended in order to have a broader access to CAR T technologies.
Thanks, José Daniel. I see some other questions posted in the chat. We'll try to get to all of them before ending the webinar. There is a question from Judith Rios in the chat regarding the potential implications of the US-Argentina trade agreement. And I think it also somehow touches on Alison Colbert's question that it's also in the chat, on what are the different priorities countries must look for in terms of IP flexibilities or negotiating trade deals, voluntary licensing, and investing in production ecosystems. What are the sequence of all of this in terms of selecting the priorities to act? And it's an open question to both of you, Giulia and José Daniel. So, I don't know, Giulia or...
No, José, you can start.
I just wanted to say, in my opinion, what works best in these kind of cases is like seeing IP flexibilities in the scope of the TRIPS agreement as a toolbox. So it is important to have in mind patentability requirements or patentability guidelines in terms of you can actually try to, like a compulsory license, for example. The case of a compulsory license happens as a last resource. So we want to use a toolbox that allows us to have like a really specific patent landscape that is not broad enough to to restrict or to create barriers to this access. But we should also bear in mind other flexibilities that allows us to sum into this flexibility to have this like full national strategy to promote access to a specific health technology. For example, in Colombia, we have like really improvable guidelines on patentability in different areas, but especially in pharmaceutical inventions. But our country last year or 2 years ago it had its first compulsory licenses because of the in other words, because of the lack of possibility of granting a voluntary license. So I think it's more like it has to be seen more like a toolbox of tools that have to be used when it's the time to use them. And the first one, of course, is guidelines on patentability, because if you have that, you won't have a compulsory license application for a technology which patent could have been rejected because it had a broad analysis from the patent office.
I'm sure, Giulia, you want to add anything to?
I agree with everything you said, and I just want to re-echo the fact that voluntary licensing is a successful access tool, but it's one of the tools. And not only to suggest that there might be alternative tools, but also to make sure that we have a full understanding of the fact that even if we have a voluntary license, it doesn't mean that access is granted. In any case, health system intervention are needed anyway. So it's always important when we think about access, especially to these complex technologies, to think about the full package that is needed to transform, to make real access for patients.
Thanks. I'm gonna take advantage of my role as moderator to ask a final question to each of you. I'm gonna also ask you to answer in a very, very quick way. The first one to Giulia. We've been hearing from José Daniel quite a complex scenario of patenting, activity in terms of CAR-T therapies. I just wanted to ask you very broadly, and without putting you in the spot, what are the key takeaways of MPP's experience in managing IP, and thinking or looking forward, if there's a possibility of an actor operating in the same space or doing similar work that you've been doing for advanced therapies. And to José Daniel, I found very interesting your presentation. I was thinking if you could elaborate a very short answer on what might be the key takeaways for countries that are not traditionally engaged in these discussions of IP and equitable access to medicines. I don't know, I'm thinking of a country like Spain or other high-income countries in Europe. So very, very quickly, and with that we will finish the webinar. It's Giulia and José Daniel.
Sure, super briefly. So I think that I'm not a patent expert, so in terms of experience, key takeaways in managing IP, I'll try to skip that in the sense that I'm a health person. So, but in terms of the potential role of MPP or alternative organization on advanced therapies, I think that before thinking about whether it is MPP or anyone else, the important thing is to understand what we want to do and where is the IP limitation and where a voluntary licensing in this type of technology is blocking, and where technology transfer intervention would be needed. So I think that first of all, we need to try to understand what is the access strategy that we want to apply, and then we're going to populate the access strategy with the right partner. So I would try to reverse the approach. And clearly, I would be happy to see the MPP working on these type of technologies, but only if our participation can be transformative.
Absolutely. Thank you. José Daniel.
Thank you. Also, really briefly, I believe in the role of civil society and academia. In Colombia is one of the cases where it's really difficult to navigate into the political landscape in order to promote these kind of measures. But I do believe that the capacity of civil society and academia can help shaping policy debates, promoting the use of chip flexibilities, also developing a strategic IP advocacy framed within the concept of health sovereignty, which is like a really big thing right now in Latin America. I do believe it's like a big answer to that question. It's not the only answer, of course, but it's like a big answer to that question. So yeah, the role of civil society and academia, of course.
Thanks for highlighting the role of civil society like Salud por Derecho in this space. And thank you again, Giulia and José Daniel, for your super engaging and interesting presentations and discussion. Thank you to everyone joining us today, and thank you for the very lively set of questions that are in the chat. I will review them personally after the webinar is ended, and I will try to make sure that you get the answer once the webinar is closed. Again, thank you very much. We will share the links for next series of this webinar series in social media, through email chains and listservs. So I hope to find you in one of the many other series of webinars that we are organizing. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day. Have a nice weekend. And yeah, see you in the next